They say the higher you climb, the thinner the air gets. But in the aerospace industry, the higher you climb, the more people are waiting to cut your oxygen line. I spent 7 years as the lead systems architect for Astra X, a private space firm that was on the verge of securing a historic $5 billion contract with the global satellite network. My job was simple. I designed the Alloy K navigation kernel, the only software in existence that could calculate orbital adjustments for heavy-lift rockets with zero margin of error. It wasn't just code, it was a masterpiece of celestial mechanics. I didn't just work for Astra X, I built the foundation they stood on. My contract was clear, a 5% equity stake upon the successful launch of the Titan I fleet. That stake was worth over $250 million. But my CEO, Marcus Thorne, was the kind of man who viewed people as stepping stones. A month before the launch, I walked into a boardroom to find Marcus smiling at a group of government officials. He was presenting his revolutionary navigation system. He hadn't just used my work, he had filed a secret corporate patent under his own name, claiming he was the sole inventor. When the officials left, I confronted him. I expected an apology, or at least a negotiation. Instead, he handed me a box for my things. He told me that my contract had been restructured due to a clerical error and that my equity didn't exist. He looked me in the eye with that disgusting, arrogant smirk and said, "The rocket belongs to the company, the code belongs to the patent holder, and you're just a girl who got lucky. Get out of my building." He thought he was being a shark. He thought he could fire me, keep my brains work, and launch his $5 billion empire into the stars. But Marcus Thorne forgot one fundamental rule of rocket science. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. He saw a box of personal belongings. I saw a weapon. You see, the Alloy K kernel wasn't just sitting on their local servers. It was designed to run on a proprietary training loop that I hosted on my private cloud for stability during the beta phase. I never officially transferred the master license because Marcus was too busy playing golf to sign the final paperwork. The second my security badge was deactivated, my system flagged the Titan I fleet as an unlicensed, unauthorized deployment of proprietary tech. He thought he had grounded my career, but he was about to find out that without me, his $5 billion rockets weren't vehicles. They were just very expensive lawn ornaments. The morning of the launch looked like a scene from a movie I had dreamt about for a decade. The Florida sun was rising, casting long, dramatic shadows across the launch pad where 3 Titan I rockets stood, shimmering like silver needles pointed at the heavens. Millions were watching the live stream. Marcus Thorne was down at mission control, surrounded by the international press, preening in his tailored flight jacket, as if he had personally bolted every panel onto those ships. He was selling the dream of a new era in space travel, but he was standing on a foundation of sand. I sat in my pajamas in a small, dark apartment 5 miles away, watching the feed on my laptop. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. I felt like an architect watching someone try to live in a house where they'd forgotten to install the support beams. In the final hour of the countdown, the Alloy K kernel initiated its routine authentication check. Every 600 seconds, the software would send a heartbeat to my private cloud to confirm that the commercial license was still active and that the lead architect's credentials hadn't been tampered with. At T-minus 45 minutes, the system detected my termination. It didn't crash. Crashing would be too messy. Instead, it entered legal compliance freeze. Deep inside the rocket's flight computers, the navigation valves locked, the fuel pumps transitioned to a low-energy safe state, and the guidance systems displayed a single, unyielding message on every console in mission control. License status, expired, unauthorized use detected. Please contact primary developer. The change in the room was instantaneous. I watched the camera feed zoom in on Marcus as his headset crackled with the news. His visionary smile didn't just fade, it disintegrated. He started barking orders at the junior engineers, boys I had trained, who were now sweating through their shirts as they realized the master password Julian had given them was useless. They tried to bypass the kernel, but every time they touched the code, the system's active defense protocol triggered a new layer of encryption. To the world, it looked like a minor technical delay. To Marcus, it was the sound of a $5 billion contract hitting a brick wall. He thought he could steal the engine and fire the mechanic, but he forgot that in my world, the engine only listens to the person who taught it how to breathe. Mission control was a symphony of chaos, and I was the conductor from 5 miles away. The countdown clock was stuck at T-minus 38 minutes, glowing a defiant red against the dark screens of the command center. Marcus Thorne wasn't just barking orders anymore. He was losing his mind. I could see him through the long-range telephoto feed on my secondary monitor. He was pacing like a caged animal, his face a blotchy purple as he screamed at the head of IT. They were trying to brute force the alloy K kernel, but that was like trying to open a bank vault with a toothpick. Every failed attempt triggered a defensive lockout. The software wasn't just frozen, it was actively burying itself under layers of polymorphic encryption. Each second that passed cost the company nearly $50,000 in fuel maintenance and orbital window fees. The global satellite network, the client behind the $5 billion contract, wasn't happy. Their representatives were on a secure line, demanding to know why the most stable system in the world was currently displaying a legal disclaimer instead of a flight path. Marcus tried to lie. He told them it was a minor sensor glitch, but the clients weren't idiots. They knew the message on the screen meant the intellectual property was contested. At T-minus 20 minutes, my private encrypted line rang. It was Marcus. He didn't sound like a shark anymore. He sounded like a man drowning. He didn't start with an apology. He started with a threat. He told me that if I didn't fix the glitch, he would have me blacklisted from the entire aerospace industry. I waited until he finished his rant, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him sweat. Then I spoke. My voice was calm, clinical, and completely devoid of the fear he expected. Marcus, I said, I'm not the one with 3 rockets full of volatile fuel sitting on a pad I don't own the rights to operate. You told me I was just a girl who got lucky. Well, it turns out my luck is the only thing keeping those $5 billion rockets from becoming the world's most expensive fireworks display. I told him that I had already filed a cease and desist with the Federal Aviation Administration. If those engines ignited without my digital signature, he wouldn't just be out of a job. He'd be in a federal cell for international patent theft. The silence on his end was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. He realized then that he hadn't just fired an employee. He had declared war on the person who held the keys to his kingdom. The clock hit T-minus 10 minutes. The Titan I fleet was now a $5 billion liability. In the aerospace world, missing a launch window isn't just a delay. It's a death sentence for your reputation. The global satellite network had already sent a formal notice. If the rockets didn't leave the pad in 10 minutes, the contract was void. Marcus Thorne called me back, and this time, the bravado was gone. He sounded like a man who had aged 10 years in a single hour. He didn't threaten me. He begged. He offered me my original 5% stake back, plus a generous bonus. I almost laughed. He still thought he was in a position to negotiate. He still thought he was the one holding the cards. Marcus, I said, watching the live feed as the ground crew began to clear the area in anticipation of a scrubbed launch. That 5% was the price for my loyalty, but you threw that away. Now you're paying for my mercy. I gave him my terms, and they were brutal. I wanted 15% equity, a seat on the board of directors, and his immediate resignation as CEO. But the crown jewel of my demand was the patent. I wanted a total transfer of the alloy K rights back to my private holding company. I wanted him to sign a document admitting, under penalty of perjury, that he had attempted to steal my intellectual property. I told him he had exactly 4 minutes to sign and verify the documents through the encrypted portal I had sent to his legal team. The background noise on his end was pure chaos. I could hear his lawyers screaming that the demands were extortion, and the engineers yelling that the fuel pressure was reaching critical levels. Marcus was trapped between total bankruptcy and total humiliation. I sat there, calmly watching the seconds tick down on my monitor. Every time a lawyer tried to argue, I simply reminded them, 3 minutes left. 2 minutes. I wasn't just taking his money, I was dismantling the myth of the visionary leader. I wanted everyone in that room and everyone watching the stream to know that the man at the top was nothing without the woman he had tried to erase. At exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds before the window closed, my screen flashed green. The documents were signed, the funds were escrowed, the patent was mine. With exactly 60 seconds left on the clock, the digital signature of Marcus Thorne hit my encrypted server like a surrender flag. I saw the confirmation icons turn from a flickering amber to a steady, glowing green. My lawyer, who had been on a parallel line, gave me a short, sharp, confirmed, the equity transfer is in escrow and the patent assignment is filed. I didn't waste a heartbeat. I entered the master override sequence, a code that only I knew, a sequence I had written in the dead of night 3 years ago, just in case a day like this ever came. On my screen, the legal compliance freeze melted away, replaced by the humming vitality of the flight systems. I hit the final execute command, and 5 miles away, the Titan I rockets felt the heartbeat of their creator return. In mission control, the change was electric. The red warning screens vanished, replaced by the white-hot data of a healthy launch sequence. Navigation online! Valves open! We have a go for ignition! The flight director's voice crackled over the speakers. I watched the live stream as the base of the first rocket began to vent massive clouds of white steam. Marcus Thorne was still standing there, staring at the monitors, his face a mask of broken pride. He had signed away his empire to save his skin, and the world was about to watch his rockets fly under my command. At T-minus 10 seconds, the roar began, a low-frequency vibration that I could feel even in my apartment. At T-minus 0, the 3 massive silver needles rose on pillars of fire, piercing the Florida sky with a violence that was beautiful to behold. I sat back in my chair as the telemetry data flooded my secondary monitor. The alloy K kernel was performing flawlessly, threading the rockets through the atmosphere with a precision no other human could achieve. The $5 billion contract was secure, but it wasn't Marcus's victory anymore. It was mine. As the rockets reached max Q and disappeared into the blue, I saw Marcus turn to face the cameras. He tried to muster one last visionary smile for the press, but his eyes were empty. He knew that the press release I had forced him to sign was already hitting the wires. The headline wouldn't be about his successful launch. It would be about the lead architect who saved the mission and reclaimed her stolen legacy. I picked up my cold coffee, took a sip, and watched as the man who called me just a girl walked out of his own mission control for the very last time. The rockets weren't even in high orbit before the shockwaves of my counterattack hit the financial markets. While Marcus was trying to hide from the press in his private office, the legal document he had signed under duress, the confession of patent theft, was being broadcasted by every major news outlet from New York to Tokyo. The global satellite network didn't care about Marcus's ego, they only cared about stability. The moment they saw that the intellectual property was now legally held by my company, they immediately redirected all future payments to my accounts. Marcus's board of directors, seeing their golden boy turned into a legal liability in less than 60 minutes, didn't wait for him to resign. They held an emergency meeting via video call while the rockets were still in their first stage of separation and stripped him of his title, his stock options, and his access to the building. By the time the sun set over the launch pad, the name Marcus Thorne was being scrubbed from the lobby of Astra X. I wasn't just a girl who got lucky anymore. I was the majority shareholder of the most advanced aerospace firm on the planet. I watched the news from a rooftop bar, sipping a drink that cost more than Marcus's first car, watching the footage of him being escorted out of the facility by his own security team. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a thief who had been caught red-handed and outplayed by the very person he thought he could discard. He tried to file a lawsuit claiming duress, but my legal team pointed out that a $5 billion rocket sitting on a pad is a national interest situation. He hadn't been forced to sign, he had been forced to be honest. And in Marcus's world, honesty was the most expensive thing he had ever encountered. Today, when people look up at the stars and see the Titan constellation moving across the night sky, they don't think of the man in the suit who stood at the podium. They think of the code that keeps them there. Astra X is gone, rebranded under my own name. We don't just build rockets here, we build a culture where the creators are the owners, and where a patent is a sacred bond, not a suggestion. Julian, or rather Marcus, tried to reach out to me a year later, asking for a consultation for a new startup he was trying to float. I didn't even answer the call. I sent him a box, the same box he had given me the day he fired me. Inside was a single printed line of code, the one that locked him out of his own dream. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's that power isn't about the title on your door or the size of your office. Real power is being the only person in the room who knows how the machine actually works. To all the engineers, the coders, and the architects who are currently being told they are replaceable, don't argue with them. Just make sure that when they try to replace you, they realize they've just removed the only part that was keeping the whole thing from falling apart. Build your own cloud, keep your own keys, and never ever let a shark tell you that you don't belong in the ocean. My name is Twoye Imya, and I didn't just survive the space race. I won it. Thank you for listening to Unsaid Stories. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in justice, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if your boss tried to steal your life's work? I'll see you in the next one, Among the Stars.